My name is Matt McGowan, and I am the Technology Integration Math Specialist for the Paragould School District. Just a little overview of the district. We have 8 schools. We have 3,140 students. We are 82% white, 18% minority, and 70% low income. We started using Edulastic. This is our actually our second year. We actually use it for the Spark assessments. So what I'm going to talk about today will be more involved how we look at it at the district level and how we utilize it at the district level, and then how we pass the information down to our teachers and to the students. So get started. So I guess next. We do use the Spark assessments for Edulastic. We use them for math and literacy. We use them in grades 3 through 11. The reason why we use grades 3 through 11 is because that's when our state assessments, they're actually 3 through 10, but we've extended it through 11. So we test in grades 3 through 11. Basically what we do is we test 4 times a year. Basically we do what we call interim assessments 4 times a year, and they are based on our high priority standards. Basically we have a criteria that goes by how we create the high priority standards and how they are formed at each grade level, at each grade band. And I'm not going to go into that detail, but that's basically what the Spark is on the Spark assessment. So we'll move on to the next slide. And I just want to go through exactly how we create the test. I think that's an important part of the data when we get it back. We want to make sure that the tests are created and how much work Edulastic actually works closely, how they work closely with us, and the process that we go through. And it's not an overnight thing, and we spend a lot of time in the creation of the test as well as looking at the data. But basically what we decide on is which high priority standards are going to be on the test. We have 10 to 14 high priority standards per grade level. After we decide on the high priority standards, we decide on which test they're going to be on. So we have 4 of them. So where it falls in the pacing, we get our teachers together in the summer, and that's a big job for us, is to take notes every year to find out where those high priority standards are falling, so we can actually test those high priority standards after they've been taught in the classroom. We send all that information off to Edulastic. A few weeks this year, we got them before school started back. And we brought the teachers in, and we actually looked at the test. We looked at the Spark test, and just to evaluate them, just to see if the questions met the standard, and just a few changes we have to make along the way. Some teachers want to change a question, want to change an answer, wanted this answer instead of another answer. I mean, just some little things, some minor things that need to be done. And then we send the test back off to Edulastic for final approval, and for the test to get completed and for them to get finalized. So right now we have all 4 tests in our bank ready to go when the time is for us to take the assessments. All right, we'll go to the next one. When we actually started testing, we keep the window open for 1 week. We want to make sure that kids that miss the test that are absent, that are sick, that we can get them in and take the test, because we really need the data from them. Other different type of testing programs, we may only leave it for a couple of days. We want to leave it open for a week to make sure we get every student through. Really, the report that we focus in on is we go into the single assessment report, and we go into the assessment summary, and I'll show you that in just a second. We go into the school, and it's a common assessment, and we look at the performance by standards. We want to compare by the students, and then we actually take the information here and we download it CSV, and we actually create our own spreadsheet from here. I know Edulastic basically has a master report that you can get, but it's in our district, it's important for us to go back and to remediate students based on this assessment. So if we do get a student remediated, we need to be able to mark them remediated, and it's hard for us to do that inside of the actual Edulastic without them taking another assessment. So we actually download the information. We actually download CSV, our data, and I'll show you what that looks like here in just a second. So if you'll go to the next slide, this is actually, we like this page here. This is one we do look at in Edulastic. The teachers do look at this page before we export it out, before we download it. I blacked out the students on the left So you can't just see the names of students, but the data here shows by standard. This is one of our interim or Spark test or interim assessments here, and it goes by standard. This is actually a fourth grade test that we took, and this is actually the average scores. I mean, we have some kids that score really well, and then it's easy for us to find gaps. It's easy to find where kids struggle, and we can create a personalized pathway for those students for the remediation to fill those gaps. So we do use this sheet. We do look at this in the beginning, but then we export this data into one of our spreadsheets, and we send that out to the teachers. So if you go to the next slide. Here's what happens when the teachers get the data. I mean, what happens next? I mean, it's important for us, just as important as us taking the test, having good assessments, but what do we do with the data? The teachers get the data. They're sent out on spreadsheets. We create, I think it's somewhere I create 24 spreadsheets that go out across the district to the individual schools, to the grade levels. And then a personalized remediation plan is created for each student. So we'll have in math right now, we'll have a remediation for each one of those standards that it's an adaptive program that they can get on. So if it's a sixth grade student struggling, it will drop them down to the fifth, fourth, and try to bring them back up. And so it will be personalized for each student. It's the teacher's responsibility to go in after that and to mark the students being remediated when they complete the remediation plan. But the building level principals are also responsible. They play a big part in our process. Once it goes from the district level down to the principals, down to the teachers, it's important for our principals to report the data to central office and monthly meetings that we have. They have a quarterly report that they have to fill out, and they have to come and they have to give us the data and tell us exactly how many kids were remediated on each standard. They're also responsible to go into the grade level meetings and have conversations with teachers. They need to go in and have conversations about different strategies that a teacher used to teach a lesson. So if we had a teacher score really well on one of the standards, we need to know why that teacher scored well if another teacher didn't. They need to have those conversations. And, I did this, I did that. This really worked in my classroom. They also need to look at the assessment. They need to look and see. We can learn a lot of information from the assessment that, 60% of the kids chose C on a question. Why did they choose that? Why? And to have those conversations to see. So when we do get the actual assessment, that they may not make the same mistake. They're also making sure that with these tests, with the interim tests, we give them 4 times a year. We need to make sure the teachers keep up with their pacing. We find that some of our teachers will slow down, and if they slow down, they don't get through all the information. So these tests help us, pace out the information to where they need to get to certain checkpoints throughout the year. We try to keep that pacing. We found in our district, our scores have really went up if we can make it through the actual subjects instead of just getting stuck on some standard that students can't pass. We need to keep on moving. We need our pacing to keep on going. So our principals do play a big part in what we do when we pass the information down to them, and they've taken on this role. As you can see here in our data coming up here in just a second, we've shown a lot of success in this process. So if you go to the next slide. Okay, here's what it looks like when we pass it out to the teachers. It looks a little bit different from the report that we just looked at that came from Edulastic. Basically what it does here is it allows the teachers to go in and put an X in a box that has been remediated. When we do that, it also populates at the top, so it lets us know where we're at as a school, as a teacher on each standard. So at the top, it has the standard. It has how many students are ready, how many are needing remediation, how many have been successfully remediated. So we're always going to have numbers needing remediated. It's just the name of the game. I mean, we're trying to get everybody, but we're really never successful at that, even though we're really hitting our goals and we're really pushing forward towards this mastery that we're trying to succeed in getting. Even at the first one, taking the Edulastic test in SA1, 6 in SA1, just on the initial assessment, 203 kids scored at the ready level. So that's a big number to begin with. If you have, 230 something and 203 already there, you're talking about a small percentage of your kids needing remediated. this is how we use this information. We make one of these for every one of our Spark assessments. And then we carry the information on from here. This report goes into a building report, which I'm going to show you next. On the next slide, if you'll click to it. This is what we get at the building level now. So this is what we try to look at in the principals meetings. We share this information. We have percentages over there on the right that tells us exactly where we're at based on the standards. This sixth grade, this Spark assessment 2, we were really successful. I mean, our lowest number of standard was 88.34. This building, this 5, 6, and 7, 8 have been really successful since we started this. From the growth, our 5th and 6th grade, I mean, based on our ACT Aspire growth scores from last year, our middle school was ranked 3rd overall in the state, and our junior high was ranked 10th overall in the state. So that's math and literacy combined. If you look at the just our 8th grade math scores, we had the #1 growth in the state on the ACT Aspire test last year. So our scores are really improving since we started this. We have our teachers have taken more ownership. The administrators have taken more ownership. The kids are really wanting to succeed, and it's been really successful so far. So we even take the data to another report here. This is a district level report that we look at. So if you'll click to the next one here, the next slide. Oh, do I not have another? There we go, right there. This is based. That's okay.
This is sorry.
Oh, yes.
Slide. Did I go forward too fast?
No, that's fine. This is it right here.
Okay.
I'm ready. This right here is what we look at the district level. So basically, on interim 1 that we took, Spark assessment #1, we had this is per student per standard. We had 7,246 students and standards at ready. We needed to remediate 1,673. We successfully remediated 950. So we were at 83.05% for interim 1. So our goals last year was 75%. We wanted to try to get to 80% this year. So we have been successful up to this point. We are only currently remediating math 3 through 11 and literacy 7 through 11. We've got a new literacy program that we're working on, and we're not currently remediating the literacy 3 through 6. They're working on another program. We will start that up again next year. So we're currently working on interim 3. It came out about a week and a half ago. So we have successfully remediated 344 up to this point. We should get somewhere around the 1,000 again. And we should be around the 80%. A lot of work goes into this. We spend a lot of time at the district level. We send a lot of reports out. But in the end, I think it's worth it. And we've seen the growth, and we hope to see more growth this year. A large part of that is because of the assessments that Edulastic creates for us. They're good. They're really similar to how they would see on our ACT Aspire exam, and giving us some good data. One thing I will tell you is that our remediation number, we've currently set it to be ready at 50% because of the number of students that needed remediated. Next year, we will bump it up to 60%. So if they score 60%, long as they score above 60%, they won't need remediated. But once we get into the remediation plan, they have to score 80% pre-test, 70% post-test to actually complete the remediation. But just to keep our numbers down, just to keep them manageable, at the high school level, that's a difficult process to do with kids. And, we have blocks of time set out for remediation throughout the day, but, having teachers remediate math and social studies and PE gets to be pretty difficult. So to work through that process is, but the big thing is, Edulastic produces us a great test. They give us the data we need, and we take the data, and this is what we do with it. And up to this point, it seems to be working pretty good, and we appreciate what they do.
Yay. Great. Thanks, Matt. And we have a couple of great questions that just came through on the chat.
Okay.
So, Chris is wondering, what are a couple of things teachers do to remediate?
Well, we have we have a program that we use that we create individual pathways for each standard. So in math, our program, if it was to remediate that, I don't know, 6NSA2, there is a pathway that we have created at the district level that a teacher can go into the program and assign to that student. And during that remediation time, that's what they work on. That program is adaptive. So if they struggle at the 6th grade level, it will drop them down to 5th, 4th, and then it will work their way back up, try to get that at the 6th grade level. So everything is all set. If a student struggles from there, if they struggle through the pathway twice, then it's a teacher's responsibility to pull them back to the back of the room and to give some individual instruction to that student before they reassign the pathway to the student. And I don't really want to drop programs unless you want me to, since this is about Edulastic.
I think it's fine. Go ahead and share.
Well, we use Imagine Learning is what we use. Imagine Math is what we use for mathematics. So that's how we create the pathways for the students.
Awesome. And then Sidabria asks, is it possible to get a blank template of these documents to share with leadership or teachers?
Yeah, could we get, yeah, I mean, I could create something that you could, that I could send out that would be already populated, that you could, the spreadsheet could be populated if I can get a list of emails or something I need to share out to somebody. I'd create that for them and send it to them.
Okay, great. We could either send that in a follow-up, or if you want to, Sidabria, if you want to email me, I can connect you with Matt directly. Here's my email. And then Victor is wondering, is the Spark option available to everyone? Oh, that's already answered by Leslie. Okay, great. And then Chris has another follow-up question. He's asking you, Matt, he's saying that you mentioned remediation time. Is that something built into every student's schedule?
Yes, each building has set their own schedule. For example, I just left the junior high from 8:30 to 9:15 every day. It's remediation time. So it's at the end of first period. So during that time, every student is working either on a remediation or enrichment. So if a student has completed and shown that they are ready, then that we move them into the program, into the enrichment. So we try to push them on to higher grade levels to just try to keep our kids. The kids need remediated busy. We also want that enrichment piece is important for us as well.
Awesome, great. If anyone has any other questions, you can feel free to add them to the chat. Matt, thanks so much for sharing what's going on over at PowerGold. It's really exciting to see the incredible growth that you guys saw. And I just wanted to mention that Matt had sent us an email a couple months ago to alert us of the success that they saw last year, and we dug into it and created a blog post and an infographic based off all the success that schools in Arkansas who have been using Edulastic have been seeing. So go ahead and check that out on the blog if you're looking for some more content to dig into after this webinar. All right, thanks, Matt.
You're welcome.
All right. And again, we'll have more time for question and answer at the end. So if you think of something that you wanted to ask, no worries. You can either enter that into the Q&A box or write into the chat and we'll address it later. All right, Kendra, want to hop on and introduce yourself and dive right in? Thanks.
Hi, everyone. So I'm Kendra Rosales, and I am a math facilitator for the Huntington Beach Union High School District here in California. I kind of walk a fine line. I have the wonderful opportunity of still being in the classroom. So I'm an Algebra 1 instructor this year, and then I also do a lot of educational leadership with teachers, students, district and site admin. So interesting for us is we are not a unified school district. So we are a high school only district. So the primary way I'm going to talk about Edulastic today is how we use it for our placement assessment for math. So as you can see on the slide here, we have 6 comprehensive high school to our alternative. We have 4 districts of 13 schools that feed into us from our local elementary schools. So every year I get the wonderful opportunity to test about 1,500 of our students who are incoming. Just to clarify though, we only are testing with Edulastic right now students that are trying to get into our accelerated geometry or our Algebra 2 trigonometry option as a freshman. You can see my kids, my husband, I like music. Those are just things about me, but we can go ahead and go on to the next slide and we'll jump right into more about Edulastic. Okay, so again, I'm both a teacher and a administrator in Edulastic's account. So what you're looking at right now is my administrator screen. I really love this screen because it gives me a quick snapshot of every assessment that's been given to the entire district and how many students it's been assigned to and how many have completed it. So notice the columns there. If I want more data, which I absolutely do to be able to use it to help with placement, you just simply click on the assessment title. So we'll go ahead and go to the next slide. And when you click on that assessment table, or assessment title, excuse me, you'll come to this screen. And in this screen, I love at the top of the screen where I can see how many tests are open, how many are in progress, how many are graded, how many are done. And why this is super helpful to me is because, again, right now, how we're primarily using it is to have placement. So I am having teachers from all of our feeder districts who are not employees of our own district. Edulastic does an amazing job in working with us. They actually create for me a fake school, if you will, where we enroll all 13 schools, all of those outside teachers, and we can create this environment so I can have all of my data in one location to be able to help place students appropriately. And so by doing this, I can see on any given day which teacher has completed the assessment and which teacher has not. If I wanted to look at any particular teacher for their data, this has come up. I also do quite a bit of ed tech leadership here in our district, and this is my little slogan. If you see that pink circle, any tech tool, if you see those 3 dots, please click on it. My slogan's 3 dots store a lot. So if you're ever searching for more information, if you click on that, you'll definitely have more options pop up. So let's go ahead now and go to the next slide. So when I did click on that 3 and I wanted to get more. So what reports do I use? So Eliana had shown you some of the different reporting screens. So on the left sidebar, if you notice there that the bar chart, this is where I found that, like on the left black place, it's on the bar chart when I pulled this up. And then sometimes it just looks like there's not much there. So when we click on refine results, which is circled in green, you can do all sorts of awesome filters. Again, for me doing this as a placement exam, usually the assistant superintendents from our 4 feeder districts want to know how their schools and how their teachers are doing. And so this allows me to sort in whatever way they want to see. It also kind of helps me to see what schools are truly achieving or are on pace, I guess I should say, with the California state standards. So when I look at data for placement purposes, the first place I always look is just the wonderful snapshot. And I love these graphics. I put them, I do screenshots all day long. So I will screenshot this table and I'll crop it and cut it and paste it into a report for the assistant superintendents. And so the pink arrow, it's my first snapshot because it really lets me know how did the test do and how did the students do and how are they prepared. One thing to note with these performance band, every district has the ability to set the performance bands for whatever percentages they like. For us, for placement, we do 70%. And so we have to, in order for them to be proficient and get in that lovely green area, it means they got 70% or above. In the darker yellow for us, it's 60 to 70%. And then anything in that pale yellow is less than 60% score. From there, if we wanted to go deeper now into a specific district, a specific school, or specific teacher, if you look at the next circled green part where it says compare by class, this is where you would pull down that drop-down menu to do your different comparisons to be able to see how did students do there. So now for what do I do in terms of placement exam, we do this really awesome thing. I think you can go ahead and go to the next slide. Yeah, okay. So next, now what happens, again, I'm using this for placement, and as most of us can probably guess, mathematics and what course you start at as freshman year of high school really sets you up for where you're headed in terms of being college and career ready. And so making sure that we place students accordingly is really, really important to us. So once all of the testing data is done, each of our 6 comprehensive sites math coordinators gather with me in June, and we sit down and we look at the scores. So from the previous slide, I told you that darker yellow color was the 60 to 70%. Any kid that scores in that band, we look at their individual test. And the reason we do that is because we're trying to find things, partial credit and mastery type items that we can potentially increase their score, because again, we want them to be placed accordingly. Now, before we can do any tweaking, though, we have to know, well, what were the commonly missed questions? So I think from both a school leader and from a teacher perspective, the awesome report is the question analysis one, which I've highlighted in green, or circled in green as well. And so you can go ahead and see the most missed questions, and it's in order from what's the most missed all the way to the best. Another little nice trick by the pink arrow is you can actually toggle these columns, which is awesome. So I know sometimes we don't always see them. I miss stuff like this a lot too, but if you click on them, it'll toggle to order in a certain way, so you can see by standard or by most missed question or whatever it is of those columns you want to do. So then once we look at each of those questions that are most missed, we determine, was this something technology-wise why they missed this question? Like they didn't enter it right? Because sometimes if a question's not written correctly, if a student was supposed to put, say, 15x, but they put 15 in the multiplication sign, gets marked wrong. Understandably so, it wasn't programmed correctly. And so we don't want a kid not getting a question right because they didn't do the technology piece right. So those are things we're looking for. Other things are like on a systems of equation problem, if the student missed the first part of the question where they had to solve for x, well, if they solve for x wrong, they're going to also get y wrong. So if they got x wrong, but their y matches their x, then we go ahead and give partial credit there. So we really, really are diving deep into analysis to make sure that the student is being given credit based on what they know, not based on just a quick answer, which is why, in my opinion, us switching to Edulastic has been huge, because what we used to do for this process was we used to give a 50-question multiple choice test. And quite honestly, I feel like multiple choice tests are a little bit of a psychology test because they offer power of suggestion, because all the answer choices are there in front of them. And so I think they can mess with a kid's brain a little bit more than just, here's the equation, please solve it. So we've really enjoyed moving to using Edulastic's interactive platform. One thing to note, our test is no longer 50 questions. For those of you that have used Edulastic, you know this is not a type of test that you want to have 50 questions on. It's too long. And so we actually have a 35 question end of year placement exam, and it's all types of question types that really give us so much more information and a picture as to what the student knows versus what they don't know. And it's been pretty amazing since we've switched to Edulastic. We've actually seen, we just did it for the first time ever last year. And last year, I mean, as a mathematician, I hesitate to discuss statistics and trends, but I will let you know, last year's placement exam, our students overall scored about 3 to 5% higher than they had ever done in years past. And so that meant we had 3 to 5% of our total students entering into more accelerated math pathways than they had ever before. I can't remember, Eliana, is there another slide, or is that it?
I don't know, let's find out.
Okay, we can do it quick. Okay, so then this was a huge one for our district. So the cool part about doing the Edulastic dashboard is I used to have to do a ton of work and give every single teacher this like individual breakdown of all, and I'm talking all the middle school teachers, of what their data was, but they actually could see the live dashboard. And so I didn't have to do any individual teacher reports this year, which was awesome, because as their students in their 8th grade classes were taking the test, they got to see that live data and they got to see right away, which in our district, the way it works is our high school district tends to get out of school about a week ahead of our feeder districts. So that really was awesome. And they tend to take the placement exam, 2 weeks before they get out. So for our 8th grade teachers, they loved that they saw what standards their student didn't hit and didn't get to. And then that gave them the last 2 weeks of school to really focus on what the student needed to know before they came to us as freshmen. And we've been having really good success so far this year with our freshmen. In terms of data analysis, because this can always kind of be a slippery slope with admin and teachers, we really try to put a mindset when we are talking about data. And we are hopefully going into, Matt, thank you so much for sharing everything about the Spark assessments, because I know that in science and in math, we really want to do interim assessments, and we don't, but we're trying just to create a mindset here that every day in every way we get a little better. So it's not about comparing, it's about how we as a teacher and them as the student can get just a little bit better. You can see on this slide here just a couple of my, tips, if you will, to help lead a really good data analysis conversation with your teachers. Make sure that we always are focused on the discussion on the strategy, not always, definitely not on, well, the teacher or on the student. It's just, okay, well, what strategy did this teacher use that did exceptional on this exam or whatnot? So that's how in Huntington Beach we've been using Edulastic, and just I cannot speak highly enough of this company. I think I am probably one of their biggest cheerleaders. They are so amazing to work with as people, and the data they have given me in a math classroom is beyond anything I've ever seen before.
Thanks so much, Kendra. That's a really great, thoughtful, and calculated process that you guys have there, and I'm glad to hear that it's saving you time as well with all those reports. I see a bunch of questions that have come in. One of the questions is, do you assign as an admin or create an assessment and the teachers assign when they are ready? That's from Peggy.
So again, it's all about building that trust with our teachers. So side note, we use the incoming freshman placement exam for geometry is also our 9th grade and 10th grade, if so be it, Algebra 1 final. So test security is a huge, huge, huge thing that I have to take into consideration. So I do all of the assigning. So when you saw that slide where I had all sorts of different teacher names for one assessment, literally every teacher for every period is assigned a very, very specific window. And for our tests, they're given 100 minutes. So literally I open it and I close it at 100 minutes. And I preset it to open automatically and close automatically, because again, some of the teachers might decide to give it when I'm teaching, so that can't happen. So I ahead of time set all of those windows to open and close automatically. Now for our middle schools though, obviously we're not a unified district, so I can't really tell another company what to do, but we have a great articulation that has been built, and it happened even before I became the facilitator. We've really worked hard to establish those relationships. So each different school determines what their schedule is, and then they email me and I set it up how they asked me to, which is also awesome with the immediate feedback, because last year I had some of the teachers, when they saw their scores, email me right away and go, oh, this kid got a 50%, but the kids had an A in my class all year. His grandma died last night or something, or whatever it was. And so it was really awesome to be able to have that email chain going already, so I could actually learn more about the student to help place them. And then in terms of setting up, so now here's the interesting part, is I can't see teacher rosters, there's something about Edulastic where as an administrator you don't get every view that the teacher gets. And again, because I needed to be able to see the student usernames and the teacher username, I was also added as a co-teacher to all of the teacher accounts. So I had my admin account, and then I was signed up as a co-teacher to each of those accounts.
Great, thank you. Does that answer the question, Peggy? And then we're going to move on to a question from Victor. He has two questions. The first question is, Kendra, do you use 8th grade standards for the 9th grade placement?
So what we use mostly is we do use 8th grade standards because, again, here I'm in California, so a lot of our standards for algebra, if you actually look them up, they're more written as an algebra 2 level. So I absolutely dip down into 8th grade standards. Sometimes I even dip into 7th and 6th, not a ton of time. And then we don't necessarily have, I guess, 9th grade standards because of just how our standards are written. So I do use high school standards and 8th grade standards. I work off of our curriculum guide for Algebra 1 and kind of get the focus standards. And that was something that was really hard for our teachers to let go of. They wanted me to ask a question on every single standard we taught over the year, and I had to really do some deep asking questions that allowed them to deeply reflect on what do we expect a student to have mastered in algebra to be able to be successful in geometry. And that is the content that goes on to our placement exam.
Okay, great. And then what are the placement options in 9th grade?
We are an all-you-can-eat buffet. We do Algebra 1, we do geometry, Algebra 2 trig, and then we have our one-off cases. We also offer algebra prep. Every site's a little bit different in what they do offer. We do not have the amount of students enrolling in algebra 2 trig that we used to. Most of our incoming feeder districts no longer offer geometry in the 8th grade. However, we are in a fairly affluent area with wonderful and eager parents who want their child to have the same experience that their older children had. So we do have quite a few 8th graders that take geometry over the summer online to still enter into Algebra 2 trig.
All right, thank you. Were there any other questions in the chat for Kendra? Great, I think that's all for now. Thanks, Kendra. And again, if anyone has any questions at any point, we'll have time after to chat more. So feel free to enter anything later. All right, and Nicole, I'm going to pass it off to you now. And go ahead and introduce yourself and dive into what you have to share. Thanks so much.
I got click happy. All right, so I'm Nicole Rock, and I work for Jonathan Alder Local School District in Plain City, Ohio, which is basically a bedroom community of Columbus, Ohio. We are a rural school that's, like I said, positioned right outside of kind of a city area with 5 different buildings and serving K through 12 public school. And I am excited about this topic of using the data to inform instruction and that type of thing, because that's really why we invested in Edulastic several years ago. And we have a situation where we present tools to our administrators and teachers, and then each building sort of does their own thing and has their own unique take on how to use the tool. So I have basically a breakdown. We're using Edulastic very specifically for 3rd grade writing, for common assessments in grades 5 through 6, for an intervention tool in and of itself for 7 and 8, and we use it for practice assessments in grades 9 through 11, more than 12, but I put 9 through 12 in there because that's how we use it in this building. You can change the slide. In 3rd grade, the previous picture actually was some of our 3rd graders doing this. I've teamed with the district literacy coach. We noticed that based on last year's writing tests, the area of relative weakness in our district, and while our kids were passing Ohio's 3rd grade writing guarantee, they were doing it, or reading guarantee, they were doing it through their reading and not by any benefit from their writing. So we have some different writing workshop initiatives coming in, and then we go in and take an older writing test from the state of Ohio, and we translate that into Edulastic, and there's a little clip of it at the top there. And then we go in and help students, like we basically scaffold their approach. We group students based on state data on how they did on the fall test. And we've been working with them since this fall in, we have like 3 or 4 different sessions planned for each classroom, where we break them into groups based on how they scored, and then we scaffold out instruction and then take them back into the Edulastic practice test, which really simulates the experience they'll have on the state test, so it's very consistent. And then we can use the data from the Edulastic in between the fall assessment and the spring assessment in order to continue regrouping kids and revising our approach, seeing where our strengths and weaknesses are relatively, and addressing those. So it's been a really useful tool for that. You can go ahead and go to the next slide. For our 5th and 6th grade building, we have a true middle school and then a separate junior high. So our K through 4, one building, 5 and 6 are in the next building. And we saw a need for rigorous and consistent questions or levels of questions across grade bands to identify areas of growth, and also to even identify like which of our teachers specifically show a relative strength in how they maybe instruct a concept, so teachers can borrow ideas from one another, and obviously identify areas that we can use. In this particular building, we have targeted intervention groups that are fluid. So basically their study hall period, where they go for that particular day, is often based on how one of the pieces that they use for that, the teachers use for that, are their Edulastic assessment scores. So for example, if we've been doing a series of assessments over certain standards in English or ELA, and a student is scoring maybe mid-range, that student may be directed towards the teacher who's then going to target mid-range students. Or if this teacher does find that he's in a situation where they have mixed groups, they put them into different either enrichment or remediation types of assignments or tools, like we use Khan Academy for math, and where they basically assign them to a certain level to start at, so that they're always at a place where we can hopefully maximize growth. And that common assessment data then helps us to just gauge, as we're going along, where the students belong in the intervention and what we do with them once we get them in their intervention situation. You can go ahead and move to the next one. 7th and 8th grade is a very similar setup. I'd say this particular school really dives into, we use MAP as an assessment tool as well as a formative assessment tool. And they really look very granularly at their MAP scores. And then they actually use Edulastic more as an intervention tool. So after they have maybe retaught something to a group of students, they'll give them they'll create multiple versions of the same assessment to kind of protect the students' egos. This is 7th and 8th grade. So students all know they have something, they all might have something different. And so there might be fewer choices for a student who's maybe struggling, or there may be easier questions, but they can all, they make basically multiple versions of the same Edulastic assessment. One teacher reports that her students actually find it to be almost like a game. She has an enrichment intervention, and in it, she tells the kids, look, I gave you 8th grade questions on purpose because we're just going to see what you can do with it. And if you get a 50%, you have really done well. And she's using it to kind of coach some of, just research on gifted students would say that they really need help in failing well. And so seeing where they're being challenged and having to think and not knowing all the answers, having it be a little bit tough on them creates some grit. And we've noticed that growth has just been phenomenal. 7th grade, specifically with this math teacher and her cohorts who do the same thing, are showing just phenomenal growth. And that building has gotten like state level awards and things because of the growth they've shown. And it's a pretty mixed group in terms of like socioeconomic and so forth. So it's not like it's this easy peasy little place to teach in, but it's been a good. They use Edulastic actually for the intervention itself to give the students practice with different standards and seeing different types of questions. Okay, we'll go to the next one. And then in 9 through 12, again, we come back to kind of more the common assessment approach. We felt like we needed to give our students more practice and give our teachers a better pulse on where students were at in their growth. So we built 2 assessments for 9th grade English, 2 assessments for 10th grade English, and 4 assessments for covering the high school social studies and government bands. And those are 2 separate tests. There's I think a social studies test as well as a government test. So we have set windows for those where teachers have to administer between those windows. We made the practice tests be 30 to 45 minutes, and they are and we made them no short answers. There's no grading involved to kind of keep the pressure off the teachers. And we have to be careful with common assessments in our district. Sometimes they can leave a bad taste in teachers' mouths, like it's supposed to be a gotcha. And so we're pretty intentional with this to copy the blueprint of the state test and try to have the similar ratio of questions and even pull as many questions as we could from data banks within Edulastic that either are written by the same people who write our state tests or the state tests themselves, so that the teachers are able to do that. And we don't open the test early. I mean, we don't want teachers really teaching the test. We just want the teachers to go into it blind too. But again, it's not a gotcha. It's supposed to just show them where their relative strengths and weaknesses are. And then they can see that, that data as they pull it and then maybe revise. We also make sure that the students, we're talking about 9th and 12th grade students here, or 9th through 12th grade students, that they can see their scores right away. So we use our master control, I think it's called, or something like that, or superpowers or something in the building of the assessment to make sure that we let students see what they did right away and be able to ask questions, and the teachers can facilitate discussions on more commonly missed questions. And
Great.
that's all.
Okay. Thanks so much, Nicole.
No problem.
That's great. And I like that point on gamification and the art of failing. It's nice, I think, when students are able to see what standards they're supposed to be at and what's ahead too. All right. Anyone has any questions for Nicole, you can enter them into the chat. I'm also looking at the time and seeing that we have about less than 5 minutes until the hour is up. So I did want to open it up to anyone who has any questions overall about anything that we talked about today, or any of the really cool things that are going on to use data to understand what students need, where teacher support can be, where teachers can be better supported, or what other programs can be adjusted for improving instruction. Thanks so much, everyone. Thank you, Matt. Thank you, Kendra. Thank you, Nicole, for taking the time to share on this webinar and be a part of it and present. You all did a great job. And thanks, everyone, for tuning in. Have a great afternoon or morning, depending on what time it is, wherever you are. All right, take care, everyone.